Good evening and welcome to our coronavirus special. I'm Gianna Gelosi. We're here every weeknight with an expert to help answer your questions during this confusing time. So tonight's guest is a financial expert from SKG Team at Barnum Financial Group in Elmsford. So if you do have a financial question you'd like to ask, you can email those questions to us, or you can message them to us on Facebook or leave a comment on our post on Facebook. But first, let's get a look at the latest numbers from the Hudson Valley. So in Westchester, there are at least 14,804 confirmed cases. In Rockland County, there are 5,990 cases. Orange County has 3,599 positive cases. Dutchess has 1,249. Ulster, 398. And Putnam, 366. So joining me tonight is Chris Kampitsis, a financial expert from SKG Team at Barnum Financial Group in Elmsford. So thanks for being here with us tonight, answering these financial questions that we might all have.
Hi, Gianna. How you doing? Glad to be here.
Good. All right. So one of the big things, of course, has been the stock market right now. So what do you say to people that have been watching their 401k fall in the past couple weeks, the last month or so?
Sure. And as you can imagine, that's been a conversation we've been having from the crack of dawn till the end of the night, every day, just having conversations about what's happening in the market and what's happening in terms of people's investments in general. And, everyone's situation is very, very different and unique to them. So what we're saying really depends upon that. But in general, it's stay the course. If you have a plan that you laid out, sticking to the plan in a time of crisis is much more likely to lead you to a path towards success than making a decision at a moment of panic. I heard someone say yesterday that it's very rare that someone makes a decision in a point of extreme panic and looks back and thinks that was a great decision. So we do have conversations right now with people who are asking us, should I go to cash in my 401k? Should I get out of the stock market? And I think the reality is, if you're a long-term investor and these weren't funds that you were intending to touch 3 months, 6 months, 24 months from now, you're much more likely to be much more pleased with your results if you ultimately maintain that long-term focus.
All right, good advice there. So you mentioned having a plan. So not everyone might have a plan. So what would be your advice to people that might not have one?
It's never too late. The reality is that when we have a plan and we're able to make a decision from a point of preparedness, in moments of tremendous crisis and uncertainty like we're experiencing now, it puts us in a better position and increases the probability of making a better decision. So if we're in a position today where we wish we had a plan and we don't have a plan in place at the moment, it's not too late. In fact, thanks to some of the large stimulus package via the CARES Act that was just passed, and thanks to so many companies stepping up, whether they're lenders, different banks, different programs, I think we're seeing the country come together, and in many ways the world come together. So there are opportunities that may not have existed in a traditional unemployment circumstance, for example, or a situation where maybe bills are stacking up, that where in the conventional normal course of doing business, we'd be left to fend for ourselves. But these current programs that are in place allow us perhaps a second chance to build a plan going forward. So whether it's consulting a certified financial planner, working with your CPA, working with an attorney, or simply an accountability partner, coming up with a roadmap for how you are going to financially navigate the next 3, 6, 12, 24 months is the most critical and essential thing that you can do right now.
Yeah, and I guess it would give you a sense of like control over such an uncontrolled kind of environment. But going back to the 401k, what advice would you have for people that might have lost their job, they're waiting for unemployment benefits, and they have an empty fridge or have to pay rent, but they do have some money in their 401k? So should they take it out to get through the next couple months? What would be your advice to them?
Just like trying to solve a math problem, there's something that we would refer to as an order of operations, right? So in the same way that you do multiplication or division before you do addition or subtraction, the 401k and the retirement plans are typically the last place that you're going to want to take from because they are designed for long-term needs. That being said, if you have nowhere else to turn, then you absolutely should consider, unfortunately, taking from those funds. But there are some programs set up through the CARES Act that are going to make that a little bit easier. So, for example, you're eligible to take 401k and IRA withdrawals of up to $100,000 combined. And you can make a decision. They're still working through this. They still haven't ironed out all the details, and this is ongoing and changing. But basically, you can work out a plan to either repay that withdrawal or spread the tax bill due on it over the course of 3 years. So again, a unique form of aid to help us through a very unprecedented environment. So absolutely, but again, I would tap into that retirement account with intentionality and develop a game plan. Do your best not to view it as an ATM. Do your best not to view it in such a way that you're not proactively making a decision related to the taxes due or the repayment plan, so you don't find yourself with a highly unexpected and potentially insurmountable tax bill down the line.
Perfect. And what would be your advice to small business owners that might be feeling this right now? Have you had any experience with these small business loans that have been offered up?
Yeah, so there's a couple programs that we definitely want to make everyone aware of, that they should consult their banker and have a discussion with as to what's available to them, or any SBA approved lender. So the first is the PPP, which basically will allow business owners to take up to 2.5 times their monthly payroll. And what they need to do is certify that they are experiencing uncertainty in their business related specifically to the coronavirus and its effects. The other is a larger economic disaster relief loan, and they're offering a $10,000 non-repayable initial grant, and then a loan potentially of up to $2 million that can be paid back over the course of a full decade at a very, very competitive interest rate. So there are definitely programs available for business owners, sole proprietors, independent contractors, but the funds aren't unlimited. We do have a commitment from the government to replenish that pool, but if you're a business owner and you're experiencing uncertainty or think you're likely to experience uncertainty in the very near future, you should speak with your lender about taking action immediately.
Perfect. So if people did want to come up with this kind of plan, they can just go to their bank, or do they go to a financial group like you? What's the first step that they would take with that?
They would typically go to their bank where they currently have their business checking account or their banking relationship. That would be the best place to start, and also to go to the SBA website and learn more directly there.
Perfect. Sounds good. So, of course, the tax deadline has been pushed back for federal and state taxes. But do you know if there's going to be any tax relief from the impact of the coronavirus when it comes down to the time for it?
I'm not familiar with any specific tax relief. They are talking about a phase to act that we may see coming down the pike, I would talk to your CPA or tax preparer about a specific game plan related to tax relief in your situation. But circling back to the concept of putting a plan in place, I think it's now more important than ever to sit down and figure out exactly, make sure that when you're filing your 2019 taxes and really forecasting what 2020 is going to look like, that you're putting actions in place to minimize, that tax liability as much as possible.
All right, sounds good. So we're going to take a short break. We'll be back in just a couple minutes answering more of your financial questions, so be sure to send them in via Facebook or email, and stay with us. We'll have more advice coming up. So joining us tonight is Chris Kampitsis, a financial expert from the SKG team at Barnum Financial Group in Elmsford. So again, thank you for being here with us tonight.
My pleasure.
Cool. So we were talking about the relief bills a little bit earlier. So some of us might be expecting a stimulus check in the coming weeks if you have a direct deposit. So if you do still have your job and you still are okay financially, what would be your advice to use that money for?
Yeah, so whenever we're building a financial plan, we like to think of our money in terms of three buckets. My short-term bucket, which is the equivalent of an emergency fund or for large expenses coming up in the next year or two. So if someone's emergency fund is less, for example, than 6 months of their expenses, keeping it there as a just in case probably makes a lot of sense. Or if they're saving towards something like a home down payment in the not too distant future, saving it there with the intention of getting to use it for that makes a lot of sense. If you don't have anything like that coming up in the next couple of years, then you want to look to the next bucket, which is the intermediate term bucket. That's a bucket where we're not necessarily trying to beat the market, but we are trying to beat the bank, and we'd be ecstatic for a consistent mid-single digit return. Those are for more aspirational purchases or experiences, typically anywhere from 4 to 6 years out. If we don't have anything like that coming up, then we want to go to the long-term bucket, which would mean make a contribution to your 401k. Take advantage of making a contribution to a Roth IRA if you're eligible, and invest where the market, where it's currently well below its highs, unfortunately. For a lot of people, this may represent a long-term buying opportunity, and it may present an opportunity to invest in your own future and your own retirement.
And on the topic of investing, if you do have some disposable income or discretionary income to kind of put towards that, what are people investing in now? What would you advise them to look at in terms of getting in the game?
Well, we're getting that question a lot. Are we at the bottom? Or is it too late? Did I miss the bottom? Are things going to go down further? We will never know if it's the time to buy, but we do know that it's a time to buy. We do know that we're anywhere from 25 to close to 30%, depending upon the index, off of our highs in mid-February. So if you are a long-term investor, if these are monies that you're not going to touch over the course of the next 24, 36 months, this may be a tremendous opportunity to invest. And if you're someone who has never invested before and you have the cash flow and the financial security to do so, we may look back and say that there was never a better time to start investing than now.
Sounds good. All right, we do have a viewer question on Facebook. So they're wondering if 401ks will come back and if the Dow will grow back to 30,000 this year. So what do you think is the projections on that?
Ultimately what the stock market are American companies. the U.S. index, and the global indexes are businesses of the world. But ultimately, what we're doing with every paycheck and every deposit is investing into these great companies led by visionaries, hardworking entrepreneurs, and people who are tremendously focused on advancing their careers. So it's hard to put a time on that. It's hard to say, you know what, it's going to be 3 months, 6 months, 18 months, or 24 months. But I would say that people who've been betting against America have been wrong since Thomas Jefferson signed the Declaration of Independence. Warren Buffett said that, and his track record is pretty good. So if you're a long-term investor, your 401k will come back as long as you don't panic and move out of equities. The only reason you may want to consider doing something along those lines is if your time horizon is short. If you are in that position you described earlier, where you may need those monies in the next couple months or the next 1 year, then it may not be appropriate to play that waiting game with the market. But if you have the luxury of time, you would benefit from letting time do its thing.
Perfect. And then just quickly, I guess a little bit in brief, what message would you give to people that are watching their 401ks now? Would you say just hold out and wait, it'll come back? What is your message to them?
I would say contribute. Purchase equities at a discount. Why would we want to pay top dollar for any item when it can be available at another store or another website 25% off? You have the opportunity now to invest in your future, to invest in a retirement, which unless it's 2, 3, 1 year away, or if you are in retirement, maybe that's another question we can ask. But if retirement is a distant goal, contribute to the 401k and give it time.
So we're saying it'll all come back. You just got to give it time and wait for that to happen. So what's the most important thing to remember right now with your finances?
The most important thing to remember, to sum it up again, to reinforce it, is put a plan in place. Don't wing this, and as things occur both negatively and positively, try to adjust on the fly. Now's the time to put the contingencies in plan if things in your financial world get increasingly difficult over the next few months. And if we're all fortunate that the world gets back to a normal state quicker than some people are imagining, have a game plan for things going well as well. You won't ever regret being prepared.
There you go. So yeah, we'll have a little bit more on that in just a bit. So we're going to take a short break, and then we'll be back with all of your Facebook questions and your emailed questions. So be sure to stay with us. Welcome back to our coronavirus special. Tonight we're talking about finances. We're being joined by Chris Kampitsis, a financial expert from the SKG team at Barnum Financial Group. So we've talked about people that for some retirement might be a long ways away, but what do you say to people that are in retirement right now using their 401k?
That's a great question, Gianna. And for long-term savers, we talked about those 3 buckets. For individuals in retirement, we really have to approach this with a very specific level of intentionality. So you're definitely going to want to consult your trusted advisor, but you need to put a strategy in place. One of the strategies that I'm a huge advocate, and my team is a huge advocate for, would be having 3 distinct buckets like we talked about before. Your middle bucket is a bucket for generating income. That far bucket is growth, because things get more expensive every year due to inflation. So 5 and 10 years from now, you're going to need a little bit more of a paycheck from your retirement account than you have today. And then there's another bucket off to the side that I coin a volatility buffer. And the idea behind the volatility buffer is break glass in case of emergency. You only touch that bucket in years of substantial stock market drop, which isn't going to be very often. Historically, over the last 80 years, there's been 60 up years and about 20 down years. So 3 out of every 4 years are up years in the market. But when that 1 or 2 years a decade come along, like this unfortunate experience that we're dealing with today, we want to take...
I hate to cut you off. We're about to wrap this up. I'm so sorry. Chris Kampitsis from Barnum Financial Group. Thanks for joining us.